In a quiet Tennessee town, where the rhythm of life was supposed to be marked by church bells, school runs, and the comfort of family dinners, an unthinkable horror ripped through the heart of a community. 4 family members were brutally slain. A 7-month-old baby, abandoned, left in the aftermath of unspeakable violence. And standing at the center of it all, a man with a chilling story, one that sounded more like the plot of a thriller than the defense of a suspect. That man was 28-year-old Austin Drummond. Authorities say he is a killer, a man who slaughtered his own family in a night of blood and terror. But Austin had his own explanation. He wasn't a murderer, he insisted. He was something else entirely. An undercover federal agent whose cover had been blown. A man forced to choose between survival and betrayal. This is the story of betrayal, delusion, and violence, the story of Austin Drummond. Austin's life, on the surface, seemed unremarkable. A young man in his 20s, living in Tennessee, tied by blood and responsibility to those he would later be accused of killing. To friends and acquaintances, he was not a man who stood out. He didn't command rooms, he didn't shape reputations, he didn't leave an impression of greatness or infamy. He was ordinary, or so it seemed. But inside, something darker was stirring. Family members had long noticed his erratic behavior. Small moments of volatility, flashes of paranoia, signs that his grasp on reality was not as steady as it appeared. Some believed he was troubled. Others believed he was dangerous. No one, however, imagined what he was capable of. The victims, 4 souls tied to him through love and blood, could not have imagined that their lives would be extinguished in a single brutal act. And perhaps the most haunting detail of all, a baby, only 7 months old, left alive amid the carnage. A baby abandoned in the silence after murder. The night of the killings was one of unimaginable violence. Neighbors reported hearing shouting.
I got here about 8:45, and he was over here at that Cornerstone Church. I figured I'd do a walk around the house, a friend of mine's, just to make sure there were no windows, doors, anything kicked in. So I walked around, but I walked back to the greenhouse. The greenhouse back door was open, and I don't leave it open. Yeah. So after I did that, I looked down to the left. I was just kind of viewing the area, and here I see a man in black just walking down through the middle of the ravine. Mm-hmm. So dial 911. I'm gonna tell you what. In 15 minutes, he was in cuffs. Yeah.
But in a world where noise is easily explained away, no one called until it was too late. When police finally entered the home, they were confronted with a scene that would leave even seasoned investigators shaken. 4 lives had been cut short, each victim showing signs of violent struggle. Each death leaving behind a gaping wound not only in the family, but in the very fabric of the community itself. The baby, miraculously unharmed, was found alone, crying, vulnerable, alive but abandoned. It was a chilling reminder of both cruelty and fate, how the smallest and most innocent had been spared, even as the adults around him were slaughtered. When investigators tracked down Austin Drummond, his story was as shocking as the crime itself. He didn't run. He didn't confess. Instead, he crafted a defense so outlandish that it made national headlines. He wasn't guilty, he said. Not in the way police thought. He was an undercover agent working with federal authorities. He had infiltrated dangerous groups, built an identity rooted in secrecy and lies. But then, his cover was blown. His family, he claimed, was part of the web. His life was in danger. He had to act. In his version of events, he wasn't a murderer. He was a patriot. A man on assignment. A man whose mission had spiraled out of control. But investigators didn't buy it. There were no records. No evidence. No federal files to suggest Austin Drummond had ever been anything more than what he appeared to be, a troubled man. The community struggled to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the crimes he was accused of. How could a son, a brother, a family member, turn so violently against his own blood? How could someone claim to be an undercover agent while standing over the wreckage of their own kin? The answer, perhaps, lay in the fragile line between delusion and intent. Experts would later weigh in, pointing to possible mental illness, paranoid delusions, schizophrenia, narcissistic fantasies of grandeur. These were the explanations that might shed light on his bizarre claim of being a federal agent. To some, this was not the story of a cold-blooded killer, but of a man consumed by a distorted version of reality. But for the families of the victims, no psychological profile could erase the loss. No courtroom explanation could bring back the dead. The prosecution painted a grim picture. Austin Drummond was no undercover agent. He was a killer. A man who snapped, who turned his violence inward on the very people who should have been his refuge. They described the crime as calculated, merciless, and without justification. They pointed to the abandoned baby as proof of his callousness. He hadn't acted to save lives, they argued. He had acted to destroy them. The defense, meanwhile, leaned into Austin's story. Perhaps not as literal truth, but as a window into his fractured state of mind. They raised the possibility of insanity, of diminished responsibility. They asked whether Austin was truly in control of his actions, or whether he was lost in a fantasy world of espionage and conspiracy. As the case moved into the courts, the public became transfixed. This wasn't just another murder trial. It was a story with layers of horror and absurdity, of violence and delusion. It was a case that touched on family loyalty, mental illness, and the blurred line between truth and fiction. News outlets covered every detail. Podcasts and YouTube channels dissected the bizarre defense. Was Austin Drummond a calculating killer? Or was he a broken man trapped in his own mind? And always, in the background, the haunting reminder of the victims. 4 lives, cut short. A baby, left to grow up without the family that should have protected him. As of now, Austin Drummond stands accused. His fate rests in the hands of the justice system.
Yes, sir. As long as it's not related to the facts of your case or anything that could infringe on your Fifth Amendment rights, I'm fine with that, sir.
I'm just wondering, is now the time for me to ask for a quick and speedy trial, or how's that work?
Well, now that I've appointed you counsel, any motions that will be filed will go through your attorney, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay.
He has pleaded not guilty, holding fast to his claim of undercover work. His trial looms, a moment when jurors will be asked to decide not only what happened on that night, but what was going on inside his mind. If convicted, he could spend the rest of his life behind bars. If found insane, he could spend it in a psychiatric institution. Either way, the lives he took cannot be restored. The story of Austin Drummond is more than a crime. It is a mirror. It reflects our fears of betrayal, that the greatest danger may not come from strangers, but from those closest to us. It reflects the fragility of the human mind and the devastating consequences when delusion and violence collide.
General, do you want the clerk, after we have had this copy served on him and it's been filed, do you want them to get a copy of you to back to the restraining order? General Goodman, is the state moving forward with felony charges in this matter?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Drummond, I'm going to enter a not guilty plea for you at this time on your behalf, being that you did not have counsel appointed or retained to represent you. Are you going to be able to hire an attorney, sir, to represent you, or will you need me to ask you questions about your finances to appoint you an attorney?
I'm not going to be able to fight.
Sir, if you could, to the best of your ability, please raise your right hand for me. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give is true, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
You can put your hand down, sir. Mr. Drummond, prior to being taken in on these charges, sir, were you working anywhere?
I have a business, inflatable limb business, kids parties, part-time shows, decorations, stuff like that.
The uncertainty of his business, I think that based on that and the fact he doesn't own much personal property, I think he does qualify as indigent for appointment of counsel. I have reached out previously to Mr. Brian Huffman out of Covington. and he has told me he is willing to take the appointment in this case. So what I'm going to do is appoint Mr. Brian Huffman to represent Mr. Drummond in this case. General, does the state wish to be heard on bond at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, at this time, the state intends to seek the death penalty. This is a capital case. We're asking that he be held without bond.
The court finds that the defendant will be held without bond, and he'll be remanded into the custody of the Lake County Sheriff's Department, pending all appearances and hearings in this matter.
I'm just wondering, is now the time we need to ask for a quick speedy trial, or how's that work?
Well, now that I've appointed you counsel, any motions that will be filed will go through your attorney, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. All right, folks, case is continued to August 14th at 9 o'clock. Thank you. We are going to also take...
And it reflects the darker side of our culture, where the line between fiction and reality blurs, and where killers can cloak themselves in stories of heroism and secrecy. In Tennessee, 4 lives are gone. A baby grows up without them, and a community struggles to make sense of it all. Was Austin Drummond a monster who carefully executed his family? Or was he a broken man lost in delusion? The answer may never fully satisfy, because no defense, no explanation, no courtroom verdict can undo the horror of what happened in that quiet Tennessee home. And so the story lingers. Not just in the headlines, not just in the courtroom, but in the silent ache of absence. The empty chairs at dinner tables. The birthdays never celebrated. The family ties forever severed. This is the story of Austin Drummond, a man who claimed to be an undercover agent, a man accused of killing his own family, and a case that forces us to ask, when reality itself becomes a weapon, how can justice ever truly heal the wounds left behind?